Poor girl saves a millionaire from a thief. The next day, she's in his house, making a hard choice. The morning sun cast a golden hue over the small farmhouse that sat on the edge of a bustling village. The house had seen better days. Its once vibrant shutters were faded, and the thatched roof showed patches in need of repair. Despite its wear, it was home to 15-year-old Emma and her mother, Nora. Nora had grown weaker by the day, her frail body confined to bed due to an illness they couldn't afford to treat. Emma had taken on the responsibility of caring for her mother and their modest farm. She tended to their animals, milked the cows, and churned butter to sell in the market. Every task was a lifeline, a desperate attempt to keep them afloat. "Emma," Nora called softly from the bed, her voice weak but filled with love. Emma rushed to her side, kneeling beside the bed and taking her mother's hand. "I'm here, Mama. What do you need?" "You're doing too much, my sweet girl," Nora said, her tired eyes scanning Emma's face. "You can't carry this burden alone." "I'm fine," Emma lied, a brave smile masking her exhaustion. "We'll get through this. I'll make sure of it." As Emma spoke, the sound of heavy wheels on the gravel driveway broke through the quiet morning air. She stood quickly, her heart sinking as she peered out the window. A large carriage was pulling up, its driver none other than Mr. Ambrose Turner, the local merchant and loan officer. Ambrose was a sharp-faced man with a calculating gaze, his tall frame wrapped in an expensive coat. He stepped down from the carriage, his boots crunching against the gravel as he approached the door. "Stay here, Mama," Emma said softly, her stomach tightening. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her to shield her mother from the encounter. "Good morning, Miss Emma," Ambrose greeted, his tone polite but devoid of warmth. "I trust you know why I'm here." Emma nodded, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. "We haven't forgotten, Mr. Turner. I'm doing everything I can to repay the loan." Ambrose's lips curved into a cold smile. "Everything you can doesn't seem to be enough. The agreement was clear. 6 months ago, I lent you money to purchase those cows. I've been patient, but patience is wearing thin." "Please, Mr. Turner," Emma pleaded, her voice trembling. "We're so close to paying it off. If you take the cows now, we'll have no way to make money. My mother is ill. We can't survive without them." Ambrose's smile faded, replaced by a hard glint in his eyes. "The terms are the terms. If you cannot repay me within 2 weeks, I'll have no choice but to take the cattle and the house." Emma's breath hitched. "The house?" "The house," Ambrose repeated, his tone merciless. "Consider it collateral." Before Emma could respond, Ambrose turned on his heel and climbed back into the carriage. As the wheels began to roll away, Emma stood frozen, the weight of his words pressing down on her like a stone. Inside the house, Nora watched her daughter through the window, her heart aching at the sight of Emma's slumped shoulders. When Emma finally returned, Nora reached for her hand. "What did he say?" Emma hesitated, then forced a determined smile. "Nothing we can't handle, Mama. I'll figure it out." But as Emma lay awake that night, staring at the cracked ceiling, she felt the crushing reality of their situation. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to save their livelihood and their home. The next morning, Emma woke early, her resolve hardened. She tied her dark hair back, grabbed her worn satchel, and headed to the barn. The cows mooed softly as she milked them, their warm breath misting in the cool morning air. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, and soon the pails were full. She churned butter and packed fresh cheese, determined to sell every last bit at the market. "Mama," Emma said as she stepped back into the house, "I'm going to the market. I'll sell enough to make a dent in the debt." "Be careful, my love," Nora replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma kissed her mother's forehead, then hitched their old cart to the family's aging mule. As the wheels creaked along the dusty road to town, Emma silently vowed to do whatever it took to keep their small farm and her mother safe. The market square bustled with life, vibrant with the hum of bartering voices, the clatter of hooves on cobblestones, and the tantalizing aroma of baked bread. Emma weaved her cart through the crowd, her mule plodding faithfully alongside her. She had positioned herself in a quiet corner, carefully arranging the last bottles of milk and blocks of cheese she hoped to sell. The morning passed in a blur of modest transactions. Emma exchanged polite smiles and quick thank yous with her customers, grateful for the few coins she earned. Each clink in her pouch brought her closer to easing the oppressive weight of Ambrose Turner's looming threat. But as the sun reached its zenith, the energy of the market shifted. Across the square, Emma's sharp eyes caught sight of a man whose polished appearance set him apart from the throng. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a tailored suit that seemed immune to the dust of the bustling market. He carried himself with quiet authority, his sharp features betraying both focus and weariness. Emma recognized him instantly: Benjamin Harcourt, the prominent oil tycoon. Stories of his success were whispered through the town, tales of boundless wealth and shrewd ambition. He was a man of means, moving through the market with purpose, as if merely passing through on his way to greater destinations. As Emma adjusted her wares, she noticed another figure lingering nearby, a wiry man with a scruffy beard and darting eyes. Unlike the customers milling around the market stalls, he wasn't browsing or bargaining. Instead, he shadowed Benjamin Harcourt, his movements deliberate but subtle. Emma's heart skipped a beat as she realized what was happening. The wiry man crept closer, inching toward Benjamin's satchel, which hung loosely from his shoulder. The rich leather bag was partially unzipped, revealing a glimpse of neatly folded papers and a wallet tucked inside. Emma's breath hitched. She watched in horror as the thief slipped his hand into the bag, deftly pulling out a handful of documents, and the wallet in one practiced motion. The crowd around them remained oblivious, their chatter and laughter masking the crime. For a split second, Emma froze. What should she do? This man, this wealthy oil baron, didn't know her. If she called out, would he even believe her? But the thought of staying silent felt worse. She had to act. "Stop!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the noise like a sharp blade. Heads turned as Emma darted forward, pointing directly at the thief. "He's stealing from you!" The thief's eyes widened as he realized he'd been spotted. For a brief moment, he hesitated, clutching the stolen items as if deciding whether to run or deny the accusation. But Emma's voice had drawn too much attention, and the onlookers began to murmur, their gazes shifting between the thief and Benjamin. Benjamin turned sharply, his piercing gaze locking onto the thief just as the man tried to shove the stolen items into his pocket. "Hey!" Benjamin's voice boomed with authority. Caught red-handed, the thief dropped the documents and wallet, shoving his way through the crowd in a desperate attempt to escape. Benjamin stooped to retrieve his belongings, but Emma was already moving. "That way!" she called, pointing after the thief as he disappeared into the maze of stalls and wagons. Benjamin straightened, brushing dust off his satchel before glancing toward Emma. His sharp expression softened slightly as he took in the sight of her. Frail, but determined, her eyes alight with urgency. "You saw him," Benjamin said, his voice low but steady. Emma nodded, swallowing her nerves. "He was going through your bag. I saw him take the papers and wallet." Benjamin glanced down at the crumpled documents in his hand. His jaw tightened as he smoothed them out, scanning their contents. "These papers," he muttered, half to himself, "are worth more than some people realize." Emma didn't fully understand, but she could see the tension in his expression, the way his grip tightened around the satchel as if it contained his life's work. You saved me a great deal of trouble," Benjamin said, his gaze softening as it returned to her. "What's your name?" "Emma," she said hesitantly, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Well, Emma," Benjamin said, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, "it seems I owe you a debt." Emma shook her head quickly. "I didn't do it for anything, sir. I couldn't let him get away with it." "Even so," Benjamin replied, his tone resolute, "you've done me a favor few would. You've earned more than my thanks." Emma blinked, her cheeks flushing slightly under his scrutiny. "I don't need anything, sir. I was just doing what anyone would." Benjamin chuckled softly. "Don't underestimate the rarity of your actions, Emma. Let me repay your kindness. Think of it as 3 wishes. Whatever you need, I'll do my best to help." Emma stared at him, her heart racing. She had spent countless nights wishing for miracles, for someone to lift the burden that weighed her family down. Could this man, a stranger whose world was so far removed from hers, truly be her miracle? "There's nothing I need," she began, her voice trembling. But then the image of her mother flashed in her mind, frail and coughing, her body weakened by illness. She thought of Ambrose Turner's sneering face, his threats to take everything they had left. "Actually," she said, her voice steadier now, "there is something. My mother is very sick, and we're struggling to pay a debt to a merchant. If we can't pay, he'll take our cows and our home. We'll have nothing left." Benjamin's expression grew serious. "Who's this merchant?" "Ambrose Turner," Emma said quietly. Benjamin frowned. "I know the man. He's ruthless." He paused, his eyes narrowing in thought before softening again as he met Emma's gaze. "Consider it done. Your mother will get the care she needs, and I'll deal with Turner." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Benjamin nodded firmly. "You've given me a gift, Emma. It's only right that I return the favor." The marketplace buzzed behind them as the commotion of the attempted theft finally settled. Benjamin Harcourt adjusted the strap of his leather satchel and turned to Emma, who still clutched her wicker basket tightly against her chest. Her face was pale, and the adrenaline from the encounter still lingered in her wide eyes. "Miss Emma," Benjamin began, his voice warm but resolute, "I owe you more than gratitude for what you've done today. You saved me from losing something irreplaceable." He paused, glancing at the satchel that contained his valuable documents. "I'd like to thank you properly. Please, allow me to take you to my estate. We can talk there, and I can show you why these papers mean so much to me." Emma blinked in surprise. "To your estate?" she asked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. "Yes," he said with a slight smile. "It's only a short ride from here. I can have someone take care of your belongings while we sort this out. I also think you deserve to know what you've helped protect." Her immediate reaction was to decline. She wasn't used to such gestures of kindness or grandeur, but the sincerity in his voice gave her pause. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, the weight of their struggles, the looming debt, and she thought perhaps this could be an opportunity to explain their plight. "If it's not too much trouble," she said hesitantly, "I suppose I could come with you for a little while." Benjamin nodded, clearly relieved. "Not trouble at all. Let me call my driver." Moments later, Emma found herself seated in the back of a luxurious car, the leather seats more comfortable than any chair she'd ever owned. The city streets transitioned into tree-lined roads, and soon Benjamin's sprawling estate came into view. Her eyes widened as the iron gates opened to reveal a picturesque mansion surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens. "This is your home?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. Benjamin smiled modestly. "Yes, though I'd say it's less a home and more a legacy. It was built by my father, and I've done my best to preserve it." The car came to a stop, and Benjamin stepped out first, opening Emma's door with a practiced chivalry that made her cheeks flush. "Come," he said, gesturing toward the grand entrance. "Let's get those papers squared away, and then I'd like to hear more about you." The inside of the mansion was even more breathtaking than its exterior. Tall ceilings adorned with intricate molding gave way to large windows that filled the rooms with warm sunlight. The polished floors reflected the light, and elegant furniture was arranged in a way that felt both stately and inviting. Emma followed Benjamin into a study lined with shelves that stretched to the ceiling, each filled with leather-bound books. A large desk sat in the center, and Benjamin carefully placed his satchel on it before turning back to Emma. "Would you like some tea?" he asked, his tone casual as if this were a normal day. Emma nodded, still too overwhelmed to speak. Benjamin called for a housekeeper, who appeared with a tray of tea and biscuits in moments. "Please sit," Benjamin said, gesturing to a plush armchair. Emma perched on the edge of the seat, feeling out of place in such a grand setting. The aroma of freshly brewed tea filled the room, but her thoughts were elsewhere, on her mother, on the merchant's threats, and on the house that might no longer be theirs. Benjamin poured her a cup and sat across from her. "I've been meaning to ask," he began, his tone softer now. "What brought you to the market today? You seem far too young to be burdened with such responsibilities." Emma hesitated, her hands tightening around the teacup. She rarely shared her struggles with anyone, let alone someone like Benjamin, who seemed to live in a completely different world. But something about his demeanor invited honesty. "My mother is unwell," she admitted quietly. "She used to run our small farm, but now she can barely get out of bed. I've been trying to keep things going, selling what little we have at the market. But," she hesitated, her voice trembling, "we owe a debt to a merchant. He came yesterday, demanding we pay it back or hand over our cattle. If we lose them, we'll have no way to survive." Benjamin leaned forward, his brows furrowing. "That's an impossible position to be in," he said, his voice tinged with concern. "You shouldn't have to carry such a burden at your age." Emma looked down, her cheeks flushed with shame. "It's just how things are," she said softly. Benjamin fell silent for a moment, clearly thinking. Then, in an effort to lighten the mood, he offered her a small, encouraging smile. "You know, hearing your story reminds me of my own," he said, leaning back in his chair. Emma blinked in surprise. "Your story?" he nodded. "You see, my father was a self-made man. He started with nothing, just a dream and a relentless drive. But the road to success wasn't easy. There were moments when we thought we'd lose everything. I remember once, when I was about your age," Benjamin's voice took on a nostalgic tone as he recounted the memory. His father, a young and ambitious entrepreneur, had invested everything in a new oil drilling project. The family had just enough money to keep their modest home, but when the project faced delays and investors grew impatient, they were on the brink of losing it all. "My father refused to give up," Benjamin said, his voice filled with admiration. "He worked day and night, meeting with investors, strategizing, doing whatever he could to keep the dream alive. And somehow, against all odds, he succeeded. Emma listened intently, her tea forgotten. She could see the pride in Benjamin's eyes as he spoke about his father, and it reminded her of how she felt about her own mother's resilience. "It taught me something important," Benjamin continued, "that even when things seem impossible, there's always a way forward. Sometimes it takes courage, sometimes luck, and sometimes the kindness of others." Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. She thought of her mother, the merchant's threats, and the little farm they'd worked so hard to maintain. Could there really be a way forward for them? Benjamin seemed to sense her thoughts. "I don't believe in coincidences," he said gently. "You stepping in to help me today, it wasn't just chance. I'd like to help you in return." Emma's eyes widened. "Help me? How?" Benjamin smiled faintly, his gaze steady. "Let's take it one step at a time. For now, I want to make sure you and your mother have what you need to get back on your feet." Emma's breath caught in her throat. The weight of her struggles had been so heavy for so long that the mere thought of relief brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. Emma stood on the terrace of Benjamin's estate, marveling at the breathtaking view. The sun was dipping low on the horizon, casting golden rays across the sprawling gardens and the quiet lake beyond. She still couldn't quite believe how her life had changed in just a few days. The suffocating burden of debt was gone. Her mother was receiving expert care in a prestigious hospital, and for the first time in years, Emma felt a flicker of hope that life might hold something better for them. Benjamin had wasted no time stepping in to help. When Emma had shared her story about the merchant, Mr. Gallagher, who had threatened to seize their home and cattle, Benjamin's expression had hardened with resolve. The very next morning, he had taken Emma back to her village to confront the debt collector. Gallagher, a grizzled man with sharp features and a hawkish glare, met them with his usual arrogance. "I gave you more than enough time," Gallagher said, his tone dripping with contempt. "And you haven't paid a single cent. The cattle are mine, and the house will follow." Emma's heart pounded as she stood beside Benjamin, who remained calm and composed. Sliding a check across the table, Benjamin spoke with quiet authority. "I'll settle her debt in full," he said. "But this ends here. You'll leave the family and their property alone for good." Gallagher's eyes darted to the check, his bravado faltering. The amount was more than he had expected. After a moment of tense silence, he grabbed the check and shoved it into his coat pocket. "Fine," he muttered, glaring at Emma. "But don't expect charity to save you forever." Benjamin's expression didn't waver. "I don't expect anything from you except to honor this agreement." As Gallagher stormed away, Emma turned to Benjamin, her eyes wide with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "You've already thanked me," Benjamin replied with a reassuring smile. "Now, let's focus on what comes next." The next step was ensuring Margaret received the medical attention she desperately needed. Convincing her to leave the farm for the hospital had been no easy task. At first, Margaret had protested, insisting she didn't want to be a burden or leave Emma to manage things alone. "I'm fine," Margaret had said, though her pale face and weak voice betrayed the truth. "We've made it this far. I'll get better with rest." But Benjamin's quiet persistence, combined with Emma's tearful pleading, finally won her over. "Your health comes first," Benjamin had told her firmly. "You've done so much for your daughter. Now it's time to let others help you." Now, Margaret was being treated by some of the best doctors in the region. Emma visited her every day, bringing news of the farm and small gifts to brighten her room. She was overjoyed to see her mother gradually regaining her strength, though it would still be a long road to recovery. Back at the estate, Emma marveled at how Benjamin's generosity extended far beyond financial help. He seemed genuinely invested in her and her mother's future. One evening, as the estate settled into a serene quiet, Benjamin invited Emma to join him in his study. "Would you like some tea?" he asked, pouring himself a cup from the ornate silver pot. Emma nodded, taking the seat he offered. "I've been thinking about what you told me," Benjamin said, sitting across from her. "About how hard you've worked to keep everything together. You've had to carry more responsibility than most people your age ever face. I'm curious, now that the debt is gone and your mother is getting better, what do you see for your future?" Emma hesitated, unsure how to answer. "I've never really thought about it," she admitted. "For so long, I've just been focused on surviving. Dreams felt out of reach." Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "I understand. When I was your age, I felt the same way. My father passed away when I was very young, and my family struggled for years. But someone believed in me and gave me the chance to change my circumstances. That's what I want for you." Encouraged by his words, Emma opened up about her love for animals and her dream of starting a small dairy business. "We always had good cows," she said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "I learned how to make butter and cheese from my mother, and I sold milk in the market. I always thought, if we had more resources, we could do so much more." Benjamin smiled. "That's a wonderful idea. And with the right support, it could grow into something truly remarkable." Emma looked at him in surprise. "You really think so?" "I do," Benjamin said firmly, "and I'd like to help you get started." As their conversation deepened, Benjamin shared more about his own past. "Not many people know this," he began, leaning back in his chair. "But I wasn't born into wealth. My father built his business from nothing, and my childhood was far from easy. When he passed away, everything fell on my mother's shoulders. She worked harder than anyone I've ever known to keep us afloat." Emma listened intently as Benjamin described the struggles his family had faced. Early failures, the weight of expectations, and the resilience it took to keep going. "But through it all," Benjamin said, "my father always believed in helping others. He used to say, 'Success means nothing if you don't lift others along the way.' Those words stuck with me, and they're why I'm here today." Emma felt a wave of gratitude. She'd never imagined someone like Benjamin, a man with wealth and influence, could relate to her struggles or care so deeply about her dreams. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." Benjamin smiled. "The best way to thank me is to thrive. Let's get started." The next morning, Benjamin took Emma to one of his properties, a dairy farm on the outskirts of the city. "This is where your dream begins," he said as they stepped out of the car. Emma's eyes widened as she took in the sight of the pristine barns, lush pastures, and sleek equipment. The farm was far beyond anything she had imagined. "This is incredible," she whispered. Benjamin smiled. "It's all yours to learn from. We'll start small, just a few products. You'll work alongside the staff and learn the business from the ground up. When you're ready, we'll expand." Emma felt a surge of excitement and disbelief. "I can't believe this is happening," she said, her voice trembling. "Believe it," Benjamin said. "You've worked so hard for so long. Now it's time to build something lasting." In the following weeks, Emma threw herself into learning everything she could about the dairy farm. She worked long hours alongside the farm hands, milking cows, making cheese, and managing the books. The work was demanding but fulfilling, and she found herself thriving in the structured, supportive environment. Benjamin checked in regularly, offering advice and encouragement. He even brought Margaret to visit the farm once she was well enough, delighting in her pride as she watched Emma at work. "This is your legacy, Emma," Margaret said, her eyes shining. "You're creating something wonderful." Emma's heart swelled with gratitude as she embraced her mother. For the first time in years, she felt like the future was hers to shape. The months that followed were a whirlwind for Emma, her life transforming in ways she never thought possible. Benjamin continued to be a guiding presence, supporting her as she established herself in the world of dairy farming. The small venture quickly became a beacon of hope for Emma, her mother, and their community. Yet, Emma knew that her journey was only just beginning. One crisp morning, Benjamin arrived at the farm carrying a large wrapped parcel. Emma greeted him at the gate, her curiosity piqued. "What's this?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "A little surprise for you," Benjamin said with a playful smile, setting the parcel down on a nearby table. "Go on, open it." Emma hesitated, her fingers trembling slightly as she undid the ribbon and paper. Inside was a large, soft teddy bear, its brown fur gleaming in the sunlight, and a red bow tied neatly around its neck. "A teddy bear?" Emma asked, her voice tinged with surprise and delight. "Not just any teddy bear," Benjamin replied, his smile widening. "This one's to remind you that even in your toughest moments, you have a friend to lean on." Emma hugged the bear tightly, overwhelmed by the simple yet meaningful gesture. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Benjamin gave a soft chuckle. "You've worked so hard and come so far. You deserve a little comfort and a reminder of how strong you are." As Emma settled into her new role as a farm manager, she began exploring ways to give back. Inspired by Benjamin's generosity, she started mentoring young people in her village, teaching them the skills she had learned. The farm became more than just a business. It was a hub of learning and community support. Her mother, now fully recovered, often visited the farm to help with small tasks and offer advice. Margaret's laughter rang through the fields as she watched Emma interact with the staff, her pride evident in every glance. One afternoon, as they worked side by side, Margaret turned to Emma with a thoughtful expression. "You know," she said, "your father would be so proud of you." Emma paused, her heart swelling at the mention of her late father. "Do you really think so?" Margaret nodded, her eyes misty. "Absolutely. You've taken everything life threw at you and turned it into something beautiful. That's exactly what he would have wanted." Emma smiled, her resolve strengthening. "Then I'll keep going. For him, for you, and for everyone who believes in me." Despite her busy schedule, Emma found time to relax and enjoy life's small joys. Benjamin often invited Emma and Margaret to his estate for dinner, where they shared laughter, stories, and dreams for the future. One evening, they sat in the estate's grand library, its walls lined with books that seemed to stretch endlessly. Benjamin poured them each a cup of tea as they discussed their next steps. "I've been thinking about expanding the farm," Emma said, her voice filled with excitement. "We could start making specialty cheeses and even sell them in the city. What do you think?" Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "It's a great idea. You've built a solid foundation here, and I think you're ready to take it to the next level." Margaret chimed in with a warm smile. "You've always had big dreams, Emma. It's wonderful to see you making them come true." The conversation flowed easily, a testament to the bond they had formed. For Emma, these moments were a reminder of how far she had come and how much she had to look forward to. Months later, Emma stood in front of a crowd at the village's annual harvest festival. The event was held on her farm, which had become a symbol of hope and resilience in the community. Rows of booths displayed fresh produce, handmade goods, and, of course, Emma's dairy products. As she stepped up to the microphone, Emma took a deep breath, her gaze sweeping over the faces of friends, neighbors, and supporters. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "This farm isn't just mine, it's ours. It's a testament to what we can achieve when we support each other. None of this would have been possible without the help of one very special person." She glanced at Benjamin, who stood near the front of the crowd, his expression filled with pride. "Benjamin Carter taught me the power of kindness and the importance of giving back. I hope to honor that lesson every day by helping others, just as he helped me." The audience erupted into applause, and Emma felt a surge of gratitude. She knew her journey was far from over, but in that moment, she felt ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the festival wound down, Emma found herself walking through the fields with Benjamin. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the landscape, and the air was filled with the hum of contentment. "You've done something incredible here, Emma," Benjamin said, his tone reflective. "Your father would be proud. Your mother is proud. And I'm proud too." Emma smiled, her heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you," she said. "You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That changed everything." Benjamin nodded, his gaze distant. "You've proven that sometimes all someone needs is a chance, and you've made the most of it." As they stood together, watching the last rays of sunlight fade into the horizon, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. Her life had come full circle, and she knew her mother's sacrifices, Benjamin's generosity, and her own resilience had brought her to this moment. "We've come a long way," she said softly. Benjamin smiled, and the journey's just beginning. As they walked back toward the lights of the festival, Emma carried with her the certainty that she could face whatever the future held. Her heart brimmed with gratitude, hope, and the quiet determination to honor the people who had believed in her, and to keep building a legacy that would inspire generations to come. Did this touching story of hope and perseverance inspire you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. What moved you the most? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and discover more uplifting tales of courage and transformation on our channel. Together, let's celebrate the power of kindness and the resilience of the human spirit. See you in the next heartwarming story.